This video documents the granting of the first encomienda early during the Spanish colonial era in Batangas. It is first set in the year 1570s when the conquistadores Martin de Goite and Juan de Salcedo first explored the island of Luzon. After leaving the coast of Tulay near what is now the town of Nasugbu early one day around the third week of May in the year 1570, Martin de Goite and his expeditionary party to explore Luzon pushed on and arrived in Manila Bay in the afternoon of the same day. His instructions from the governor, Miguel Lopez de Legaspi, were to make peace and win friends in Manila. This would not ultimately turn out not to be possible. Upon arrival, the Spaniards had sent word to Raja Soliman, the greatest chief of all that country, meaning the area which is now Manila, stating the terms of peace and friendship that they, the Spaniards, wished to establish with the people of Manila. Soliman initially showed willingness to make friends with the Spaniards and even forged a blood compact with de Goite. In spite of the compact, however, Soliman was actually hatching a plot to fall upon the Spaniards at the first rain, when it would be impossible for them to make use of their arquebuses. An arquebus was an early type of portable gun supported on a tripod or a forked rest. Word of this got through to the Spaniards, reported by relatives of Solomon's own warriors. What transpired next is really outside of the scope of this narrative. Suffice it to say that fighting did break out, resulting into many deaths to the natives and the Spaniards burning down their towns. Soliman himself had to flee for his life. Wary of the arrival of the southwest monsoon, which would have made it impossible for the larger ships to return to Panay, the Spanish colonel Martin de Goite made the decision to sail out of Manila Bay rather than pursue Soliman and his men. He sent the injured Juan de Salcedo, grandson of Governor Miguel Lopez de Legaspi, still not recovered from the arrow wound he received in the Bombon Lake area, ahead to Panay in the junk San Miguel. De Goite himself preferred to stop off and stay with the Ord Paraus for a few days in the town of Balayan. He did so in order to win over all the towns which were desirous of peace. Earlier, on his way to Manila, he had already established friendships with the chiefs of the town of Balayan, as well as those along the coast of Tulay. He finally left for Panay after having been summoned back by de Legaspi. Word also reached him that 3 ships sent by Don Martin Enriquez, viceroy of Nueva España, under the command of Juan de la Isla, had arrived. De la Isla brought with him letters from Felipe II, the King of Spain. These letters contained explicit instructions for the colonization of the country. It was his, the king's will, for the lands to be settled and divided among those who conquered and subdued them. Armed with these instructions, de Legaspi late in 1570 ordered the founding of a colony in Cebu, which he named El Nombre de Jesus. The colony had 50 inhabitants, to whom he allotted repartimientos of Indians with the approbation of the provincial of the Agustinian order, Fray Martin de Herrada, and of the master of camp and the captains. The repartimiento, meaning division or partition, pertained to the system enforced in Spanish colonies whereby natives were allotted to Spanish settlers as cheap or unpaid labor, but not as slaves. It was seen as a replacement for the encomienda system, which had been abused by Spaniards in their colonies elsewhere in the world. The latter was no different from the feudal system in Europe, whereby monarchs, unable to defend the expanse of their domains against the advance of barbaric tribes, delegated defense of their lands to the nobility. Essentially, the nobility was in charge of the protection of the inhabitants of their lands, and in return was entitled to collect levies from them. In the Spanish encomienda system, natives were technically assigned by the monarch, but in reality by his representatives, to Spanish settlers in the colonies. In return, the encomenderos, those granted encomiendas, received tributes from the natives ostensibly under their care. Although the repartimiento was conceived to replace the encomienda, in some colonies the two systems continued to be used at the same time. In the context of the Spanish colonization of the Philippines, the terms repartimiento and encomienda seem to have been used interchangeably in historical documents. Because of the continuing problem with food in Panay, on 16th April 1571, a day after Easter, de Legaspi sailed to relocate his entire camp in Manila. The choice of Manila was something of a curiosity, since de Guaite had left it not exactly in friendly terms with the natives. On the face of things, Balayan would have been a more logical choice, since the natives had been more welcoming of the Spaniards than those of Manila. A 1570 document prepared by Hernando Riquel, the chief notary, provided a clue about the choice of Manila over Balayan. This document firmly laid the blame for de Guaite's acts of war in Manila on provocation by the Moros or the natives, and staked a claim not only on Manila but on the entire island of Luzon. And inasmuch as the said fort and town of Manila have been won in lawful and just war, and since, according to the said natives, Manila is the capital of all the towns of this said island, therefore, in His Majesty's name, he was occupying and did occupy, was taking and did take, royal ownership and possession, actual and quasi, of this island of Luzon and of all the other ports, towns, and territories adjoining and belonging to this said island. By the 3rd day of June 1571, de Legaspi gave the title of city to this colony of Manila, where he had quickly made peace with local chiefs, even the erstwhile antagonistic Soliman. Those who refused to accept peace with the Spaniards, like the province of Kapampangan, or what is now Pampanga, and the village of Cainta, known as Cainta in the present day, he sent his forces after, led by de Guaite or de Salcedo. He also issued an edict through which he declared, in the name of King Felipe II of Spain, that he would be granting repartimientos to those who desired to settle in the city of Manila. Because of his services to the Crown of Spain, particularly in pacifying, pacify being the term used by many Hispanic documents to mean subdue, natives who were unwilling to become friendly with the Spaniards, the first repartimiento in Luzon was awarded to de Guaite along with a river called Bombon. The river called Bombon was the channel that led out to Balayan Bay from the lake. This repartimiento, sometimes called Encomienda, was the area around what is now Taal Lake, known as Bombon at the time, and from which the province of Batangas would evolve. The repartimiento, or Encomienda, was granted on 28 July 1571 and included 8,000 natives from the lake and river areas. It was the first granted in Luzon. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey to Taal, Batangas. I hope you found its story as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Until next time, keep exploring.